The palace was quiet in the early morning, a calm settling over the aftermath of the Dravik attack. Repairs were underway, soldiers moved through the halls restoring defenses, and civilians returned to their homes, cautious but alive. The energy of the city was a mix of relief and anticipation. Princess Lyraya stood on her balcony overlooking the capital. The sight of the people below, busy rebuilding, brought a strange warmth to her chest. She thought of Daniel, of the way he had fought, of the calm courage he had shown while every other Valorian soldier had hesitated. She no longer felt anger at the thought of marrying a human. The anger had been replaced by respect, curiosity, and a cautious admiration. The queen's voice called from behind her, "Lyraya, it is time." The princess turned, seeing her mother approaching, regal and composed. "Time for what?" she asked softly. "To make your choice public," Queen Erethiel said. "The council awaits, and the humans have sent representatives. This marriage is no longer only for tradition. It is now a symbol of alliance, unity, and strength. It will inspire both our people." Lyraya nodded. She had wrestled with her pride for days, had tested Daniel repeatedly, and had seen him in battle. She understood now why her mother had chosen him. Humans were different, not weaker, not crude, not unworthy, but resilient, clever, and capable of courage that even her people rarely displayed. She walked to the great hall, her silver gown flowing behind her. Daniel waited at the front, looking calm but alert. His uniform bore marks of previous battles, minor scratches from palace defenses and the Dravik attack, yet he stood with confidence, ready for whatever came next. As she approached, he bowed. Slightly a gesture of respect without arrogance, Lyraya felt a flicker of warmth. She had judged him harshly, but now she saw the truth. His strength, his honor, and his courage were genuine. The council members, nobles, and foreign representatives fell silent as she reached the front. Lyraya raised her chin and addressed the room. "This union is more than duty. It is not only an alliance between humans and Valorians, but a testament to the strength that comes from trust, courage, and unity. I accept Captain Daniel Hayes as my equal, my partner, and my husband." The hall erupted in whispers and murmurs. Some nobles frowned, unable to accept a human as the consort of a Valorian princess. But the soldiers, especially those who had witnessed Daniel's actions in battle, clapped and cheered. They had seen the proof of his worthiness, and the acknowledgement of that fact by Lyraya carried more weight than any decree. Daniel stepped forward. His eyes met Lyraya's. "Princess," he said simply, "I am honored, and I will do everything in my power to protect you, your people, and this alliance." Lyraya nodded. "And I will stand by your side, not because you are human, but because you are strong, brave, and because you fight for what is right." The ceremony was brief, but symbolic. Exchange of rings and oaths reflected not just a personal bond, but the merging of two cultures, two species that had once looked at each other with doubt and mistrust. As the vows were spoken, Lyraya felt a deep sense of completion. Her fears, her doubts, and her pride had been tested, and she had found in Daniel a partner worthy of both her life and her people's future. After the ceremony, word of the union spread across Valoria. Soldiers and civilians alike began to see humans in a new light. Where they had once doubted the species' strength, they now witnessed courage, selflessness, and ingenuity. Stories of Daniel's leadership at the colony, his defense of the palace, his unwavering determination became lessons in human resilience. Meanwhile, the Dravik threat remained. Their fleets had been scattered temporarily, but intelligence. Reports indicated they were regrouping. The queen, her generals, and Daniel strategized together. Lyraya observed, learning not only about war, but about leadership and decision-making that combine Valorian precision with human adaptability. Humans think differently, Daniel explained during a council meeting. We improvise when plans fail. We make use of what we have, and we refuse to give up, even when odds are against us. You can plan all you want, but courage and action matter too. Lyraya found herself nodding in agreement. She had spent her life learning tradition and precision, but Daniel's approach had merit. She could see the merging of strengths, the elegance of Valoria, and the persistence of humanity, and realized that together they could face the galaxy's greatest threats. In the days that followed, joint training began between Valorian soldiers and human forces. Larea and Daniel led exercises, showing that unity was not only possible, but powerful. The soldiers learned to respect human ingenuity, and humans learned Valorian discipline. Small victories in drills and strategy exercises fostered trust, breaking old prejudices. One evening, after a long day of coordination, Larea and Daniel stood together on the palace balcony. The city below glittered in the soft light, and the sounds of rebuilding echoed through the streets. "You've changed my view of humans," Larea admitted quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. "And you've shown me that strength can come in forms I never imagined." For the first time, Larea allowed herself to relax completely. She realized that she no longer feared the marriage, no longer saw Daniel as someone unworthy. He had proven himself not through words, but through actions, through courage, persistence, and selflessness that transcended species. The days passed, and the Dravic fleet launched another attack, expecting weakness. But this time the human-Valorian alliance met them head-on. Daniel and Larea led the forces together, combining Valorian precision with human ingenuity. The battle was fierce, but the combined forces repelled the invaders decisively. After the victory, the people celebrated not just the alliance, but the human spirit that had contributed so much to their survival. Stories of Daniel's leadership, his bravery, his partnership with the princess became legends. And Larea's choice was praised as wise and forward-thinking. Standing amidst the cheering soldiers, Larea found Daniel's hand. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for showing me what it means to fight not just for honor, but for people." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "It was never just about me, princess. It was about all of us, and together we could face anything." The queen approached, her golden eyes warm with pride. "You have done well, Larea. And you, human, have shown a courage and wisdom that few of my people possess. You are worthy of this bond." For the first time, Larea felt truly at peace. She understood the meaning of the alliance, not just as politics, but as a partnership that combined strengths, challenged prejudices, and brought hope to their people. As night fell over the city, the stars shining brightly above Larea and Daniel stood together on the balcony, looking toward the horizon. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and challenges. But for the first time, they faced it as equals, as partners, and as the embodiment of what two species could achieve when trust, courage, and perseverance guided them. In that moment, Larea realized she had gained more than a human husband. She had gained a companion, a teacher, and a reminder that sometimes strength and hope come from the most unexpected places. Humanity had proven itself worthy, not by domination, but by courage, compassion, and determination, and in the heart of Valoria, under the watchful stars, a new chapter began, one where humans and Valorians could walk side by side, stronger together than they had ever been apart. The night was unusually still in the Valorian palace. Crystal lights glimmered softly across the halls, and the gentle hum of the energy fields gave the illusion of peace. Princess Larea walked alone through the corridors, lost in thought. The events at the colony weighed heavily on her mind. Daniel Hayes had shown her a side of humans she could not ignore: a courage, tenacity, and a strange selflessness that did not exist in the Valorian way of life, and yet she refused to admit it aloud. Pride burned too fiercely in her chest. She rounded a corner and almost collided with a guard. "Report," she demanded. "The palace is secure, princess," he said, bowing quickly. "All external sensors show no movement beyond the walls." Larea nodded, though she felt an uneasy tremor. Something deep inside her warned that danger was closer than anyone believed. Meanwhile, Daniel patrolled the perimeter, checking security fields and scanning the darkened grounds. The Dravic were clever, and he knew they would not strike openly. If they infiltrated the palace, the casualties could be devastating, Captain, soldier whispered, pointing to a faint shimmer near the main energy conduit. Sensors picked up movement. Daniel nodded. Stay quiet and follow my lead. Inside, Lariah returned to her chambers, only to find a strange silence. The usual attendants were missing, and the doors to the balcony were ajar. A chill ran through her, and instinctively, her hand went to the hilt of her sword. Then came the sounds, the low, mechanical hiss of the Dravik, crawling through the corridors like predators. Lariah's heart raced. She drew her blade and moved to the hall, her senses alert. She had fought in many battles, but never inside her own home. Never against enemies who had no honor and no rules. Suddenly, a group of Dravik emerged from the shadows. Her armor gleamed black under the crystal lights, weapons raised. Lyra struck with precision, felling the first attacker, then pivoting to block another's strike. But there were too many. They pressed her from both sides, and for the first time, she felt panic claw at her chest. Then a voice cut through the chaos. Princess, move! Daniel leapt into the corridor, swinging his rifle with precise force. He knocked a Dravik off their feet before firing at the others. Lariah watched, stunned, as he fought with a combination of speed and brute determination that she had never expected. Together, they moved through the corridors, back to back, Daniel covering her, when her strikes left her exposed. She could feel the difference between their styles. Hers was perfect, elegant, precise. His was raw, adaptive, and relentless. They reached the central chamber where the palace's energy core pulsed with light. A Dravik captain, larger and stronger than the rest, blocked their path. Its red eyes glowed, and its weapon hissed with deadly energy. You cannot stop us, it growled in harsh tones. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. Watch me. He darted to the side, drawing the Dravok's attention while Lariah positioned herself to strike. The two attacked together, Daniel distracting and pushing the enemy off balance. Lariah landing precise blows that weakened its armor. When the Dravik lashed out toward her, Daniel threw himself in front, taking the brunt of the blow. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth and kept fighting. Lariah felt a rush of shock and something unfamiliar fear for him, concern she could not deny. The battle raged, every movement a test of endurance. Lariah found herself relying on Daniel in ways she had never allowed herself to rely on anyone. His instincts, his unwavering focus, kept them both alive. When the Dravik captain charged for a final strike, Daniel grabbed a piece of energy conduit and swung it like a club, sending the creature staggering. Lariah moved quickly, her blade piercing the Dravok's armor at a weak point. The enemies that remained fled, their hisses echoing through the halls. The palace was quiet again, though the aftermath of battle left scorch marks and overturned furniture everywhere. Daniel staggered, leaning against the wall, blood running down his side. Lariah rushed to him instinctively. You're hurt, she exclaimed. I'm fine, he said with a faint smile, though his lips were pale. You're safe. That's what matters. Lariah's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he could not be fine, but she couldn't. She only looked at him, truly looked, and realized that this human, this man she had judged so harshly, had saved her life. Not because it was his duty to a princess, not because of politics, because he had chosen to fight for her. For the first time, she did not argue with her mother's choice. She could see why Daniel had been selected, not for status, not for strength alone, but for something Valorians rarely possessed, the courage to stand alone, to risk everything for others, and to keep moving when all seemed lost. Why? Why do you fight like this? She asked quietly, still holding his arm. Daniel met her gaze. Because someone has to. Because if I don't, no one else might. His voice was steady, though his body trembled from exhaustion. Humans. We survive, not because we're perfect, but because we never give up. Lariah nodded slowly. She could feel her pride shifting, bending in ways she did not understand. She had expected to dislike him, to resent the human who had been forced upon her. But now, standing here with him, she saw something different, a kind of strength. It did not belong to her people, but was no less powerful. The aftermath of the attack left the palace in chaos. Valorian soldiers worked through the night to repair breaches, secure vulnerable corridors, and ensure no Dravik remained.
Ow.
Daniel, though wounded, refused to rest until the defenses were strengthened and civilians were safe. Lyraya stayed close, helping where she could, learning from him without admitting it. When the dawn came, the first light reflecting off the palace crystals seemed different. Not brighter, not softer, but charged with a new sense of possibility. Lyraya and Daniel stood together, surveying the city below. The attack had been a warning, a test, and they had survived. Princess Daniel said, his voice low, "You can't fight alone. Even the strongest need help." Lyraya swallowed, realizing he was right. She had relied on herself, on her training, on her pride, but without him, she might not have survived the night. I see that now, she admitted quietly, her voice almost lost in the wind that blew through the balcony. "You are not what I expected, human." Daniel chuckled faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." For the first time, Lyraya smiled without pride or anger. It was a small thing, but it marked a turning point. She no longer saw Daniel as merely a human, saw him as a partner, a warrior, and someone who had proven that humanity in its raw and unpolished way could stand against forces that Valoria had never faced. The palace would recover. The Empire would survive this night. And perhaps Lyraya thought she would learn to trust humans, not because she had to, but because they had shown her they were worth it. But the battle was far from over. The Dravik would return, and new challenges would arise. Lyra knew that the coming days would test not only her strength, but her understanding of courage, loyalty, and the true meaning of partnership. And with Daniel by her side, she felt for the first time a spark of hope that together, they could face anything. The royal hall of Valoria glowed with crystal light, each beam of energy running across walls carved with the history of 1,000 years. Princess Lyraya stood at the far end, her silver robe trailing behind her as she faced the woman who ruled all the stars her people had claimed. Her mother, Queen Arathiel, sat high on a throne of living crystal, her calm expression as sharp as a blade. Lyraya's hands trembled, her voice breaking the silence that hung like heavy chains. "Mom, why do I have to marry a human?" she shouted, her eyes burning with frustration. The words echoed across the chamber. Guards stiffened, but did not move, knowing better than to interfere in matters between the queen and her daughter. Queen Arathiel's gaze never wavered. Her golden eyes were cool, her voice measured. "Because it is the only way to save our people." Lyraya's heart pounded in her chest. Save their people. She had grown up hearing that the Valorian Empire was the jewel of the galaxy, a race of unmatched grace, intelligence, and strength. How could one human, a member of a species that had only begun to stretch its reach into the stars, be their salvation? "That is madness," Lyraya hissed, her voice shaking between anger and disbelief. "Humans are reckless. They fight like animals. They have no refinement, no sense of honor, no understanding of our ways. And you want me, your daughter, your heir, to bind myself to one of them?" The queen rose slowly, her robes flowing like molten silver, her presence filling the hall. She stepped down from the throne and walked toward her daughter. "You are not being asked, Lyraya. You are being told." Lyraya's breath caught. She had defied her mother many times before, but never had the queen spoken in such a cold and final tone. Queen Arathiel placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Our empire is fading. You see only the brilliance of our past, but I see the cracks spreading in our foundation. Worlds lost to rebellion, fleets worn thin, nobles whispering against us. And beyond our borders, the Dravik horde rises again. Stronger than before?" Her grip tightened. "The humans are growing. Their strength multiplies with every year. They adapt faster than any species I have ever known. We need them, Lyraya. And for this alliance to hold, it must be sealed in blood and bond." Lyraya's throat tightened. "So I am a tool to you, a pawn for your politics." The queen's eyes softened for a moment. "You're my daughter. Because you are my daughter, you are the one who must do this. No one else has the strength to carry such a burden." Lyraya pulled away, her chest heavy with rage and sorrow. She turned sharply, her silver hair whipping behind her, and stormed out of the hall. The guards lowered their heads as she passed, not daring to look at the fury written on her face. She did not stop until she reached the palace, balcony overlooking the capital. Towers of light stretched into the skies, and ships rose and fell, like glimmering stars. Should have been beautiful, but all she saw was a cage. Her freedom, her choice, her life, fall chained by her mother's command. She gripped the railing, her claws scraping against the crystal surface. A human. She whispered bitterly, of all things, a human. Behind her, a soft hum of footsteps approached. Lariah spun, ready to lash out again, but it was her tutor, old Master Varen. His eyes weary but kind. "You heard Lariah accused," her voice sharp. "I hear everything in this palace," the old alien said with a faint smile. His long white tendrils of hair brushed his shoulders as he moved closer. "And I also see things you do not." "There is nothing to see," Lariah snapped. "My mother would throw me into the arms of a primitive brute because she has lost her faith in our own people." Varen sighed, resting his hands on the railing beside her. "You speak as though you know humans. I have read reports. Have seen recordings? They are violent, crude. They build ugly machines and call it progress. And yet," Varen said quietly, "they survived things no other race could. Their homeworld tried to kill them with storms, quakes, and wars. Of their own making, still they endured. Still they rose. Perhaps that is why the Queen chose them." Lariah turned away, folding her arms tightly. She did not want to hear reason, not when her heart boiled with anger. Later that night, the palace announced the arrival of the human captain chosen for her, Lariah. It stood stiffly at her mother's side as the great doors opened. The humans were simple creatures, she thought, yet when the man entered, he did not bow. He did not stumble in awe at the sight of Valorian grandeur. He walked with steady steps, his uniform plain compared to the shimmering armor of her guards. But his presence carried weight. "Captain Daniel Hayes," the herald announced. Daniel's eyes scanned the hall before resting on the Queen. He placed a hand on his chest in salute. "Your Majesty." His voice was strong, not trembling, not submissive. Lariah narrowed her eyes, studying him. His dark hair was cropped short, his jaw set firm, his body built not for elegance but for survival. She hated that he looked unshaken, hated that his gaze was calm when it turned briefly toward her. The Queen gestured. "This is my daughter, Princess Lariah." Daniel inclined his head slightly, not a bow, not the kind of deference Lariah was used to receiving. "Princess," he said simply. The single word stung more than any insult. No flattery, no admiration, just acknowledgement. As though she were nothing more than another soldier in his path, her pride burned. "So you are the human my mother has chosen?" she said coldly. "Tell me, do you even know what it means to stand beside royalty? To share the bloodline of an empire older than your species' first starship?" Neil met her eyes without flinching. "I know what it means to keep my word. If this alliance is what's needed, then I'll stand where I must. Not for titles, for peace." Lariah's lips parted, but no reply came. His answer was not what she expected. It's not arrogance, not groveling, just simple conviction. The Queen watched silently, her face unreadable. Lariah turned away sharply. "Peace will not last," she muttered. "Not with humans involved." But deep inside, beneath her anger, a seed of unease took root. For the first time, she wondered if she had underestimated them, and so the first meeting ended not in trust, nor in open hatred, but in something far more dangerous: curiosity. The days that followed Daniel Hayes' arrival at the Valorian palace were filled with tension so thick that even the servants moved with careful silence. Princess Lariah did not hide her disdain for him, and he made no effort to flatter her. Pride. To the courtiers, it was a spectacle, a clash between two worlds. To Lariah, it was unbearable humiliation that she had to even share the same halls with a human. She spent the first morning of his stay plotting how she would expose him as weak, ignorant, and unworthy. If she could prove to her mother and to the nobles that this man was nothing more than a primitive soldier, then surely the queen would abandon this foolish plan. At the midday gathering, Raya announced a contest of wits. In the royal garden, under the high glass domes where alien flowers shimmered with silver petals, she had a large board set with carved stones of obsidian and crystal. It was a Valorian strategy game, older than most empires, one she had mastered. "Since childhood, humans claim they are clever," she said loudly, making sure the nobles circling the garden could hear. "Let us see if their minds can match even a fraction of our discipline." She gestured at the board. "Sit, human, play." Daniel looked at the game pieces with calm eyes. He did not boast, did not even ask for the rules. Instead, he sat opposite her and studied the board. "You know the game?" Raya asked, her tone mocking. "No," Daniel replied plainly. A ripple of laughter passed through the nobles, but he added, moving a piece after only a moment's glance. "I understand patterns." The match began. Raya placed her stones with practiced grace, weaving traps and closing gaps with the confidence of a master. Daniel, though clearly unfamiliar, adapted quickly. Every time she thought he had walked into defeat, he shifted the play into something unexpected. His moves were rough, not elegant, but they forced her to think differently, to abandon the comfortable lines she had always used. After an hour, the board was filled. Raya leaned forward, her brow tense. She had not won icily as expected. In fact, she had not won at all. Daniel had forced the game into a draw. Silence hung heavy. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. Raya's lips trembled with fury. "You cheated," she accused. Daniel looked at her steadily. "No, I just refuse to lose." His words struck, harder than she wanted to admit. She rose sharply, storming out of the garden. Behind her, whispers spread. A human had held the Princess of Valoria to a stalemate in her own game. The next day, Raya arranged for a sparring demonstration. In the palace arena, soldiers gathered, curious to see how a human would fare against Valorian strength. She chose the largest of her guards to face Daniel, confident that the man would be crushed in moments. "You do not have to fight," Daniel said when she announced the challenge. His voice was calm, but his eyes held a hint of something she could not read. "You insult us by refusing," Raya shot back. "Show us what humans are made of, or are you afraid?" Daniel nodded once. "Fine." He removed his jacket and stepped into the ring. The Valorian guard towered over him, his muscles thick and his armor gleaming. The crowd murmured, already certain of the outcome. The signal was given, and the guard charged. Daniel moved quickly, ducking under the strike and using the man's weight against him, fought with no wasted motion. No flashy skill, just raw experience. His blows were precise, his footwork steady, and though he was smaller and weaker, he refused to fall. Minutes passed, the fight growing intense. Gasps rose from the crowd as Daniel held his ground, even forcing the guard onto his back once before. Being thrown himself, at last, the duel ended in another draw. Both men stood panting, bruised but unbroken. Raya could not hide her disbelief. She had expected him to be flattened in moments. Instead, he had matched her strongest warrior. When he returned to her side, Daniel wiped blood from his lip and said quietly, "Humans don't win because we're the strongest. We win because we never stop fighting." That night, Raya paced her chamber restlessly. She hated how his words clung to her mind. She told herself it was nothing, that he had been lucky, that she would find another test he could not pass. The third test came in the grand hall, during a feast with alien nobles from across the empire. The gathering was meant to display Valorian culture, elegance, refinement, mastery of art, and diplomacy. Raya whispered to her closest allies, instructing them to challenge Daniel with veiled insults and complex riddles of etiquette that no outsider could possibly navigate. The nobles surrounded him with questions, their words laced with traps. Yet Daniel answered with calm honesty. When they mocked human ships as ugly, he said they are built to survive, not to impress. When they hinted that humans were too young a species to understand politics, he replied, "Sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see what the old ones miss." His lack of arrogance disarmed them. Now his directness, so unlike the polished deceit of court life, confused them. Instead of making him stumble, their traps only made his steady nature stand out. By the end of the feast, even some nobles seemed intrigued by him. Lyraya sat rigid at the high table, her pride wounded again. She could not understand how he kept turning her efforts into quiet victories. Later, in the shadows of the palace halls, she confronted him directly. "Do you enjoy humiliating me?" she hissed. Daniel looked at her, his face calm, though his eyes were tired. "I don't want to humiliate you, princess. I'm just doing what I always do. Survive, adapt, and keep moving." Him, searching for arrogance, for mockery, but she found none. His words were plain, his tone even, spoke not as someone trying to win her approval, but as someone who did not need it. For the first time, Lyraya felt something she could not name. It was not respect, not yet, but it was not the pure contempt she had clung to before. Still, she turned sharply, refusing to show weakness. "You will fail. Humans always fail in the end." Daniel's voice followed her as she walked away. "Maybe, but until then, we fight." In the quiet of her chamber that night, Lyraya lay awake, staring at the ceiling of crystal and light. She wanted to hate him, to dismiss him as crude and unworthy. Yet she could not forget how he had held his own in every test. She could not forget the fire in his eyes when he said he would not lose. For the first time in her life, the Princess of Valoria felt uncertain, and far beyond the palace walls, whispers of discontent grew. Not all nobles approved of the alliance. Enemies within and without watched closely, waiting for a chance to strike. But in the heart of the empire, two very different beings continued to clash, their pride and stubbornness shaping something that neither of them yet understood. The sky above Valoria's capital glittered with serene beauty, but far beyond those stars, trouble stirred. Rumors spread like wildfire through the palace. The Dravic horde, long thought weakened, had begun moving their fleets. Edge of Valorian space reported raids, burned farms, and slaughtered outposts. Fear crept through the empire. Lyraya overheard these whispers as she walked the palace halls, her silver gown brushing against polished crystal floors. Everywhere she turned, nobles murmured, servants looked anxious, and even the guards seemed restless. She found her mother, Queen Erethiel, in the war chamber, studying maps of glowing light that showed enemy fleets pressing against Valorian defenses. Daniel Hayes stood there too, in his plain uniform, watching silently. Lyraya bristled at the sight. "Why is the human here?" she demanded. Daniel did not flinch at her tone, simply answered, "Because I've fought wars. You're about to face one again." The queen raised a hand before Lyraya could speak. "He is right. The Dravic horde moves like predators. It will not strike the core yet, but they will test us at the borders. We must decide how to respond." Lyraya stepped closer to the map, her sharp eyes scanning the lines of defense. "We send our fleets to crush them, as we always have." Daniel leaned forward, his finger tracing the projected light. "If you send the fleets now, you'll leave gaps in the outer sectors. The Dravic don't fight for honor. They'll bleed you by striking the weakest points again and again. You'll chase them until your forces are too thin to protect anyone." The queen studied him carefully. "And what do you suggest, human?" "Set traps," Daniel said simply. "Make them think you've left a colony undefended, then hit them with everything when they come. Humans learned a long time ago, you don't beat predators by standing tall. You beat them by making them bleed every time they strike." Lyraya stared at him, anger rising. "You dare lecture us on war? Our people fought battles before humans left their own planet."
Oh.
Daniel looked at her calmly. "And yet here I am, still standing in your war room, telling you the truth." Her words froze in her throat. He did not shout, he did not boast, he simply spoke as if he had nothing to prove. It was infuriating that very night word arrived of a Dravic strike on a mining colony near the edge of the empire. The queen summoned her council. The generals argued for a full response, but Daniel spoke again. "Send me. Give me a small unit. I'll hold the colony until your fleet arrives. If I fail, you lose little. If I succeed, you save lives and prove the Dravic can't just raid and run." The hall erupted in laughter and outrage. A human, leading Valorian soldiers. Madness. But the queen silenced them. Very well, Captain Hayes, you will have your chance. Princess Lariah, you will go as well. See for yourself what your future husband can and cannot do. Lyra opened her mouth to protest, but the queen's voice left no room. She bowed stiffly and left the chamber, her chest tight with fury. The next day, they traveled aboard a swift carrier ship. Lyra stood at the viewing port, staring at the stars, her heart heavy with resentment. Beside her, Daniel checked his weapons, his movements calm and practiced. You think you'll impress me by playing hero? She muttered. Daniel did not look up. I don't care about impressing you. I care about saving people, is blunt. Honesty unsettled her more than any flattery could have. When they arrived, the colony was already under attack. Flames burned across the horizon. Civilians ran for shelter as Dravik raiders stormed through the streets, their armored forms towering over the frightened miners. The Valorian soldiers hesitated, waiting for orders. To Lyra's shock, Daniel didn't wait. He charged forward, barking commands in a voice that carried over the chaos. Cover the civilians, push them to the shelter. Keep the Dravik away from the landing pads. The soldiers, startled at first, obeyed. Daniel moved among them with certainty, his rifle blazing, his movements quick and precise. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he was everywhere at once, dragging a wounded miner to safety. Firing bursts to cover retreating soldiers, shoving over barrels to block enemy fire. Lariah, blade in hand, joined the fight. Her strikes were elegant, her movements swift. She fought like the warrior she had been trained to be, her blade slicing through Dravik armor with precision. But in the chaos, she noticed something strange. Where she fought with skill, Daniel fought with grit. Where she struck with perfection, Daniel survived with stubbornness. He refused to fall, refused to yield. At one point, a Dravik warrior nearly crushed him, slamming him against a wall. Lariah moved to intervene, but Daniel twisted free, driving his blade into the creature's throat. He staggered up, blood on his face, and kept fighting. Hours passed. By the time the Valorian fleet arrived, the colony still stood. Civilians were alive. The Dravik had retreated, bloodied and beaten. When the soldiers cheered, it was not for the princess, it was for the human captain who had led them. Lariah stood apart, her chest rising and falling as she tried to understand what she had seen. She approached Daniel as he cleaned his blade, his uniform torn, his body bruised. You risked yourself for miners, she said quietly. For strangers. Daniel looked at her, sweat dripping down his brow. That's what soldiers do. Doesn't matter if they're miners, farmers, or royalty. If they can't fight, we fight for them. His words struck something deep inside her. Valorian warriors fought for glory, for empire, for honor, rarely for the weak. Yet this man, this human, fought for people who meant nothing to him because someone had to. For the first time, Lariah did not know what to say. On the journey back, she sat in silence beside him. She stole glances when she thought he would not notice, studying his tired face. There was no pride in his eyes, no arrogance, only quiet resolve. She thought of the times she had called humans crude and primitive. But now, when she closed her eyes, all she saw was Daniel standing against the Dravik, bloodied but unbroken, holding the line until the fleet arrived. That night, as the stars passed outside the ship, she whispered to herself, perhaps. Humans are not what I thought, but she quickly silenced the thought, burying it beneath her pride, for even as her feelings began to shift, dangers grew greater. The Dravik had tested Valoria's borders, and they would return. And within the palace itself, not all nobles were. Pleased by the humans' rising reputation, the storm had only begun.